Very good morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you may be. All of us care about the environment, but change only happens if it makes business sense. And today the idea is to show you what makes business sense, how to do it in practice, and also give you a taste of data, a slice of packaging data. My name is Antti Kosunen. I'm one of those people who believe that we can change the world with usable data. So I will be talking about business and environmental data combined. Then Daniel Collado-Ruiz is a former eco-innovation professor who's currently in charge of Earthster product. He will be showing you eco-innovations, how to do those in practice, and how the customers are engaged with the process. And then Kai Lankinen will be talking about printing impacts on the packaging, environmental impacts. And as he recently did his PhD, 2 years ago, on printing packaging eco-efficiency. At the end, we will be answering your questions, so we have 20 minutes time for that. Please start writing your questions immediately when you have the questions there. And then one more thing. We have been working with packaging companies and realizing that the data they are getting, data that they are sharing, and how it's being done, the kind of results there are, that varies quite a lot. So we are doing a research on environmental data usage in packaging business. So there's a link on the chat. So please book a time for the interview if you have time for it. So half an hour interview, and then we will provide you the results. We'll tell you the whole interview results from all the participants, but also we'll give you a half an hour free consultancy so that you can understand that here are the results. So what in your own situation? But my presentation starts immediately when I have my presentation online. So this is the thing what we are talking. So engaging with customers, that's good business when you can in collaboration with your customers do eco-design. It says eco-design LCA. So have the actual data and doing the eco-design, getting the instant feedback on any changes on the product design that you may be doing. And it's the same first line, because engaging your customers can be the thing that you can grow your business. And I said that everything has to make business sense, otherwise the change doesn't happen. And when you become greener, you can save costs, sell more, or your branding. It doesn't matter if you think about customers, employees, or investors. When you are greener, actually are greener, that is something that companies can be a competitive edge today. In a couple of years, it's a must. It's a business as usual. Today, the greener companies are still the ones that others are interested in learning more about. And now it says some steps what one needs to take in order to have as big environmental impacts, as big business impact as possible. So one needs to have a good databases, and then you have the market average numbers, which is very important. But still, you need to refine those with your own company data, and then also connecting the data with whole supply chain, creating a living LCA, an LCA that can be always using the latest information, always up-to-date information. And then when you have collected the data, when you've done your LCAs, make sure that it's not greenwashing, make sure that it is true. So you need third-party validations. And that's one thing that we've done for Earthster, so that it would be as easy, as efficient as possible. And then US consultant said once that Earthster is the only LCA tool that one can use without headache. And I'm repeating that because the UX is very important. The experience, how do you get the usable data And then the more we can spread the usage of it, the better we save the globe, and also the better it's for business. And the real business impact happens when you engage your customers. So do the eco-innovations with customers. And you can't skip any of these steps that I have drawn. It is very important to have the best data in a format that it can be used, because it's always up to date and actively done together with customers. I hope I started you think about the business aspect of this one. And then next thing is that Daniel Collado-Ruiz will be showing how it will be done, how it's done in practice. And if you would let him on stage, Daniel, stage is yours.
Hello. Thank you, Antti, for that introduction. And I'm going to dive a little bit into how that looks. And the first step on that is I'm going to look at the title of today and go through a little bit of a definition, or set a ground base on why we talk about what we talk. So the title of today is LCA Systems for Packaging, Sales, and Ecodesign. And one thing that I want to pick out, and probably many of you already know, but that's LCA. So why are we talking about life cycle assessment, or LCA? And that's because it's a systematic, standardized, and structured way for you to measure environmental impact. So it's a de facto way when you want to understand the environmental impacts throughout the life cycle. And you'll see a parallel between this life cycle and the value chains that Antti was mentioning, right? So you want to get data from your suppliers, which is part of the value chain, and you want to pass it on to customers because they start to request for that information, continuing that value chain. So it's the way to say, well, this is the scope, this is the broadest scope for us to understand, and therefore this is the angle through which we can measure environmental impacts in a way that we make sure that we're not greenwashing. Maybe it's not intentional, but we make sure that we're not, even unintentionally. And I want to touch a little bit on that value chain angle, because many of you will have heard, will have come here thinking, well, scope 3, right? We're talking about suppliers, we're talking about scope 3, because scope 3 is basically anything that you're not directly emitting or you're not directly responsible, your energy consumption, etc., but what your suppliers are doing or what's happening later down the value chain. And LCA models thrive in this space, right? So this is the place where you can really understand your scope 3 instead of just assigning a value that is plus minus a big percentage. Instead of that, you're getting a picture that's precise. It might be for an average and it's precise, like Antti mentioned at the beginning, when you're relying on databases, and later you get an image that is for a particular supplier and that's precise, and then for a particular product and that's precise, and then for your particular scenario of that particular product and that's precise. And the other angle I want to explore before jumping into the premise is ecodesign, because basically ecodesign means that you're considering environmental aspects when you're developing or designing a new product. And there's a number of methodologies, but I want to pick up on one common thread that they all have. And that is, when you're developing the product, you need to know about its environmental impacts. So they all have a prior step of informing the design process, right? In some cases, it might be through a full assessment or making the assessment of the product. And in some other cases, it might be more qualitative. So this is particularly relevant in the environment that we're today in packaging, because in the case of packaging, you always package something, right? You're always packaging some good. Therefore, there's always a dialogue with some customer, be it internal or external, right? So it might be your customer when you're designing packaging for somebody else, or it might be an internal customer, which is somebody else in the company that is responsible for that packaging within the scope. But there's always a co-development of the product inside the packaging with the product outside of the packaging. So eco-design becomes particularly tricky and particularly interesting. You can see my research background on the interesting there. So let me show Earthster now. And so what would be the ideal case, right? The ideal case in this particular context is that we would be able to communicate fluently about environmental impacts So we would say, okay, so I'm sitting down, I'm responsible for the packaging. I have somebody here who's telling me constraints or specification, and based on that, we can have a dialogue and very fluently say, well, I'm changing this and I'm removing the label, and this is the final number that I'm getting, right? I just did very quickly some changes. Ideally, these would happen automatically, right? As we're discussing, we would get that insight. But we want to make that process as seamless and as fast and as simple as possible, so that we always have this number, and this number is the best that we know so far, right? The principle of the best available information. And then if we change any decision, we see in real time what's happening. So how do we get to that ideal case, right? We have a bit of a divide between that ideal case in which I want to say something and I get the environmental impact, and then we have the other end of the spectrum, which is I need an answer to that, and I need to send that to a department to carry out an LCA, right? Do a study that may take a while to get an answer back. It may take weeks, may take more, may take less, but it's a realistic figure, what I'm saying, right? So we don't have that iteration. We don't have that dialogue with the customer, because we have the dialogue with the customer without the information, and then the information comes. We want to make sure that that information is there all the time. So here I'm showing a model of a plastic bottle that I've done in advance, and I've done some homework in advance because my thesis here today is going to be that the importance is for you to look at LCA as a system more than as a study or as an answer to a question. And there's a few implications of that, and I'm throwing here some ideas about what those implications are and what the things we should do. So in this case, for example, we had a packaging. We can very easily change the grammage, but we could also go into the body and say, well, instead of this plastic, I want to swap it for plastic from a supplier, and I'm getting here some pre-modeled plastics that I've modeled inside my company, right? So what does it take for me to be able to do those changes so quickly? There's basically three building blocks, and three broad building blocks. One of them is these templates. So I've called this plastic bottle template. Because we are very used in the LCA world to think about LCAs of scenarios or specific cases, right? With some exceptions, which means that we're making an LCA of a model, like of a product, and then the next one will be a modification or a new one of those. And one of the ways of scaling this up in the organization is to think of coherent groups of products. In this case, for example, if I manufacture different types of plastic bottles, different hundreds of thousands of types of plastic bottles, there's still a series of elements that make the model common, right? So if I look at the 100,000 at the same time, what I say is, okay, so all of them are comprised of a series of parts, all of them have a series of materials, and then I start thinking, what are the differences? Well, there's these 200 different types of materials that they might have. So let me make that an option in the model, but they all have some type of plastic in this case. So we think of these templates not as a particular thing that I'm modeling, but of making an LCA of any type of this product. Because what I'm thinking is that this will be a model that anybody will take and adjust to a particular product, or we may do this programmatically at scale. But so step one is thinking of your LCA as a template, so that somebody else is going to be using it to do the LCA, but you're not doing the LCA itself. And then another angle is you saw on the search, and I can repeat it. You saw on the search that I typed here plastic supplier, and I had here some models already of particular suppliers. This is an example, so these are not particular suppliers, but that is because in the background, I have done the LCA exercise of modeling each one of the alternatives. So if I go here to supplier data, I have here all the different plastics, all the different parts, all the different labels. Probably in your real life case, you would have dozens or hundreds of alternatives, or even thousands. I've modeled all of these, means that I've made the decisions of what material is this, what type of processes do I have associated with it, or things like do I have information about the carbon footprint of this? So I'm going to scale it up or down based on that information or other data that I have. Now, this creates a bit of a separation between the LCA professionals who are making these decisions that are more methodological, and the person using that template who is just saying, these are the amount of grams, does it have a label or not? The decision, basically the information that they're usually talking with the customers. And that information that you discuss with the customers is different from case to case. Those methodological decisions are normally not part of it. So that's the reason to separate these two. Templates on one side, which is for anybody in the company, because it's the language that the company speaks, and or the customer speaks even, and the background data or the supplier data. And then the third element, which is more difficult to show here, is thinking about the background connections, meaning that you always plan on making the information better. And I'll grab onto the slide that Antti shared. You don't want to just make a model, decide that this supplier is polyethylene scaled this way and stop there. You constantly want to have better information. You want to figure out where does that model come from. You want to improve why does this supplier have this. So the same that your customers are asking you, you can reduce your environmental impact by asking your own suppliers. So you want to have a system through which your data doesn't only get maintained, but gets better. So that means that you want to have a way of requesting your suppliers to improve the data, especially when it's most relevant, but also keeping track of the different versions so that every one of these that you look, you can control, you can publish for yourself a given release, but then as the information gets better, you can update it and use always the latest information. And at some point in your plan, delegate this to your suppliers so that they are the ones doing the LCA of their plastic in this case, and you are receiving updates from them. This is very different from company to company because in some cases it might require educating the supply chain. In some cases, might require educating your organization, like training more people to understand environmental language. In some cases, it might require having a system of connecting this, for example, with your procurement system or connecting this with different data sets that you have. So summing up these three elements, my key message here is that there's a lot of value in making environmental information scalable so that we don't think about specific answers, giving an answer to this customer or that customer, or giving an answer in this category, but thinking about systems, thinking about LCA at scale. And since I have the microphone, I'll end with some additional comments about the research that Antti mentioned, because I'll be heavily involved in that. So the origin of this is that we have identified that in packaging, the information about products and their environmental sustainability can be very, very diverse. That's the information that customers request, but also the information that they expect, which may or may not be the same, as well as how that information flows and how it answers questions. So as part of this, we're inviting all of you to participate in a study that will consist of 30-minute interviews. And in exchange for your time, we'll be sharing the status, the results report with you, but also we will be sharing that tailored to your particular case. So we will have an additional 30-minute consultation for free, in which we expand that into your particular case that you've shared with us in the interview. So you will be seeing in our comments the link to book that interview, and I'm looking forward to discussing with many of you from here. Thank you very much. That was my message, and I'm looking forward to the questions later.
Thank you, Daniel. Hey, I have seen this many times. I've used Earthster, but every time I have the same feeling that this is cool. and the software itself being cool is actually much more important than one could think about. Because the only data that makes a difference is the one that's being used. And therefore, the tool that you can be using it is very important that it is the one that people like. And one of the things what we are doing here is that we are changing the usage of environmental data. It's no longer only for the LCA experts or environmental experts, but it's for every business decision maker to do those scenarios, do what ifs. And then there's still room for the experts, LCA experts. They are required to do the first versions, but then it should be in every business they use. and then and not only in use of what you are doing yourself, but also to share it with your customers as an additional service when you provide the data. And then funny thing there is that when you are providing additional service to your customers, they are using Earthster, and they probably will continue using Earthster with the whole product, the thing that is inside your package. And then it's a starting point that they can start much faster, and then they will give you the use phase data to use. So combination is that it's actual collaboration. That's what it should be with connected data. But now it's time to hear something different. So a slice of packaging. So we'll hear a environmental expert printing part of that. So Kai will be talking about environmental impacts on printing. Kai, the stage is yours.
Yes. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Antti and Daniel, inviting me to this webinar. And people typically speak about, when they speak about carbon footprint or packaging, people think about materials. And the printing part has been forgotten or has not been handled yet. So let's take a dive into that. Let's change to my presentation. So influence of printing on packaging and LCA. I feel that LCA is like an upgrade to that what I have done earlier, and I didn't want to touch and go into LCA earlier, but now being known Earthster as a program, and that I feel more comfortable that we can speak about LCA also. And by the way, it's great to have all the participants around the world and so many friends here. So whenever there are questions, please ask, and reminding that write the questions. We will answer those after the presentations. Typically, on the left side, you see that traditional figure that you want to have something fast, or you can have it fast or cheap, but not good, and other way around, cheap or good, but not fast. So that's what we are used to here for a long time. But then thinking further, and what is the disruption, what's happening in the printing process, what's the disruption, what's happening currently in the packaging chain, is that actually you can have all those three things together, and we can also add it to be more sustainable, more simple, more flexible, and that all comes not in a traditional way, but you have to change something, and you can change from traditional spot color printing to expanded fixed color printing. That's what I've been investigating during a long time, 16 years in my PhD, and that's a passion, what happens in the printing. So let's see. As said, packaging material and carbon footprint factors of packaging are mainly coming from the packaging material. And then interesting part is that still a big part of the CO2 is related to the printing process. It's the question of the waste. It's a question what's happening in the process itself. And when going deeper into that, we see that there's electricity, there is heat generation, there can be gas, there are of course inks and solvents depending of the ink system, dryers and plates, and once again plate material itself, and once again the process. So this division going finer and finer details is actually the same what we saw in Daniel's presentation, that in Earthster you can go always one layer deeper and deeper. So as it's been, people typically think that it's a substrate and you have to take some other biomaterial or replace it somehow. The interesting part here is that the thinner and thinner the material goes when you're down caging, the printing process still stays the same, and the influence of it becomes bigger and larger. And people have forgotten or haven't even thought about it. But now I've been speaking about this for many years, and people are realizing that in printing you can really influence on CO2 and now even to LCA. The question is, how do you make the design? There are many ways to influence to the design, making it to have a less number of colors, to make it consume less ink. What is the size of the printing plate? What is the change over time from one job to another? How much washing solvents are used, and consumption kilograms, pounds of ink? All those are questions which are influencing on the eco side. And I've been pleased to be in part of different projects where we have been optimizing the packaging throughout the printing also. And as you can see, these have been successful cases, and carbon footprint calculation being done has been really lowered. So what you need is to collaborate with the people that have been there, that know what's happening. So not trying to do that alone, but with the supply chain, it becomes easier. Earlier, I have been doing this mainly as a carbon footprint analysis, analyzing what is the CO2 equivalence kilograms from different sources translated into CO2. Now with Earthster, it's like broadening that and taking steps further. And I didn't want to speak earlier about LCAs because CO2 was only part of the LCA. But now having that backup and backbone there, there is a possibility to go deeper and deeper. And the good thing is to have also the members of the supply chain there. So this way you can have the scope 1, scope 2, and now especially the scope 3, which is becoming a hot topic this year and next year. So here is my contact information. We can do projects together and go deeper into details. But now this was all as a such and short. Thanks.
Thank you, Kai. That's very interesting. The printing impacts are bigger than one could assume. There was a learning experience with Caterpillar, so totally different industry, but when doing an assessment for them, realizing that 98% of the emissions are coming from the moment that the machine leaves the factory gate. And then only way to know such numbers, what Kai was showing, or this kind of Caterpillar things, is that you have to do the LCAs. Fascinating. Hey, cool. Hey, let's go through some of the questions. For some reason, I seem to be getting them directly. So please write the questions also on the chat. And then we can pick questions, all of us three from there. But let's start. There's a skeptic. I like these kind of questions. So somebody's asking that, do you really want to share everything to your customers, but also do customers care? Hey, I'll give the first part of the question to Daniel, and the second part, do customers care? And I'll even add the word to the end of the question is why. So please type on the chat that do customers care? Do packaging companies' customers care, and why? And then while you type your answers there, Daniel, so do you really want to share everything to your customers? How would you answer that question?
There's very different companies, so I can say my view, but there will be as many opinions as people we have listening to us. But there's the thing is, there's no need to make a decision of sharing nothing or everything. And that's something that I think we're a little bit stuck. It used to be like that. That you either did, so to say, share the full model and gave access, open your house and be completely naked, or you just give them the final figure, and then the other ones have to trust you, and also they don't get much out of it, so they don't know how that figure can go up or down. And the reality is that there's many shades of gray. Right, so you don't have to think, should I share my secret recipe that only few people in the company have access to? That decision can be no, and you can still share a full LCA model. And then what I mean with a full LCA model is that part can be hidden, but you keep the rest. That's one thing that we paid a lot of attention in Earthster, is giving you fine-grained control over what you share and what you don't. So you can, of course, share only the total impact, and that will have some effect, or you can share only certain layers, so that it's telling a story, it's helping your customer design their products, it's helping that dialogue. And then when you try to go very deep to that secret recipe of combination of ingredients, that's out of bounds for them. You can go, or some certain people in your company can go, but that's out of bounds for those people, right? So there's many ways of sharing, and the decision is not full transparency versus no transparency. Probably the sweet spot is somewhere in between, and that's why I say that there's probably as many opinions as listeners. Some people, their sweet spot will be here, and some people, their sweet spot will be here. And maybe the sweet spot is different depending on who the actual customer is, and how much weight they carry, and how much information we already have to share with them. And then, do customers care, and why? I'm very interested on hearing the responses from our users. I can say that from the environment that I'm in, it sounds like customers are asking, therefore they care. And then recently I've been in discussions in which they were saying that customers want more, but there's a little bit sometimes lack of clarity on how much do they want right now, right? Because there's the information you need today, which might be, enough to get the stamp today. Like I need to do my reporting today, so let's get this number here, and let's get it out of the way. And then there's a lot of talk and a lot of concern about regulation coming later. So people want to make sure that their data is high quality, so that they don't do accidental greenwashing, but also so that by the time the regulation comes in, and that's coming from many angles, right? So it's coming from the financial area, it's coming from the size of the company, it's coming from the sector, it's coming from, can we even make environmental claims, right? So all those different types of legislation are coming, and people are saying, well, I know that I need to know better in X months, so I need to start getting my engines ready to have that information now.
Yeah. But that's one of the reasons why we are doing the research. That's the link is on the chat, so that we would learn more about that. Because what we have learned from customers so far is that the packaging companies' customers, they do demand the data, but what kind of data and then why? That's additionally very interesting questions. Hey Kai, what's your view on this? Do customers care, and also why?
That's the first thing what they are asking, how many kilograms. So it's really hard to answer if you haven't done the study, if you don't have any model. But typically, whenever there is a question, the percentage doesn't mean too much. That's already a good start. But the final question is, how many kilograms? How is it per 1,000 pieces of packaging? So you have to have some real figures, and then of course it's a question: is that a lot or not, and how much that in the whole total process?
Yeah. Hey, there's also interesting comment by somebody that EU Green Claims Directive will be a big driver for more LCA-based, science-based claims. And I totally agree. The regulators, very good that they do, are pushing companies to be greener. But my assumption at the moment is that they are not doing it. The pain isn't big enough for companies from regulators' side. It's more of a what customers are demanding, because the customers are getting ready for including those EU claims or any regulators' demands for environmental data. But today the pain is in customers' companies, in customers more than that you are being forced to do something. So in order to get something done today, in order to be ready for the demands from customers, from regulators, you have to start it today. And then interesting to see that how strong development there has now started.
I would say here that when you are changing a material, there is always question of a cost. What does it cost, and so on. But the interesting part in a printing process is that when you make it more efficient, so it means that it's cost neutral, and you will also get more flexibility, and you will get the sustainability in that. So that's a part what I want to highlight and bring in, that people, hey, let's focus in the process, let's make it more efficient, less waste. So every time reducing something is more ecological.
Yeah. Companies do better business when the greener they are. That's has been validated from investors' perspective, that the greener companies are better investments, as well as several companies have reported substantial savings, cost savings, when they have become greener. So it makes business sense. Hey Daniel, there's a long question that you posted here. Why don't you take it?
Yep, we have a question. How much are we able to consider detailed processes and resources, for example, regarding oil spill and soil remediation on top of different type of plastics and their management? The beauty of LCA is that it can consider anything from the lenses of LCA, right? So from the lenses of how it affects the environment, and then it can consider anything. And in some cases, you rely on the database. So you rely, in our case, for example, we work heavily with ecoinvent, and many people in the LCA space do. Right? It's one of the major databases. So then you can sort of say pick Lego blocks and build your model out of Lego blocks. I haven't recently looked for whether there's oil spills or soil remediation on ecoinvent itself. But then the part of LCA, ecoinvent, is an LCA model. Like it's made of LCA models. So if you have information about what type of resources do you need for oil spill remediation, and the effects on the direct effects of them on the environment of oil spill remediation, basically you have the information to account inside LCA for oil spill remediation. You could do an LCA only of that, for that matter. So the beauty of LCA is that it's versatile to the greatest extent. Sometimes also the challenge, because if it's not available, then you can pull together the building blocks. You can build your own Legos, so to say. And then the second question is there any ongoing training for Earthster to dive deeper into the details and make sure results are as they should? Antti, I don't know if you want to color this one. There are several trainings in different moments of the year. I don't have right now a calendar of when the next one is of.
Yeah. Hey, also what I could mention, since there's a question about it, there's Environmental Impact Academy will be arranging. They provide interns, and then there's another interesting webinar that they will be running in 2 weeks. After I stop speaking, I'll put a link there so that you can participate on that also. And then if you want more training, Earthster specific training, just poke us. We'll find you something that.
So the Environmental Impacts Academy organizes regularly the sessions. I thought, Antti, you were going to go know the date, so that's why I threw it out. But so that's one alternative. Then also Harvard organizes currently online trainings with Earthster, and there's other players doing trainings ad hoc. So get in touch with us, and depending on where you are, we'll recommend a better option.
Hey, there's also another interesting question. How can you be certain that the data is correct? And I guess this relates to the Earthster usage since it's written like this. So again, sending this to Daniel.
Different ways. So in Earthster tries to guide you so that things are correct. But for example, one common practice in lifecycle assessment, and it's documented in the standard, in the ISO standard. If you're going to share your results publicly, they should be critically reviewed. That's the small version. Critically reviewed means that somebody looks at them and says, "Does this make sense? Are there any obvious gaps?" If you want even more of a support or of a verification stamp, you can get third parties to verify the actual data even. And this is something that was almost unthinkable a while back, and now it's very much in the thoughts of and discussions of people. So have third parties that say it's not only you saying it, but we've looked at it and we don't see any gaps. The data seems to be aligned with what we see everywhere else.
I would say here that that's always a good question, that what is the data, where it comes from, where it's related, because in printing you are using certainly energy, and the question is how the energy is produced. In Finland it's water power or wind power, solar power, whatever. It can be somewhere else, from oil, whatever, nuclear power. And then a good question is related to the solvents, for example, ethanol and these, how those are produced, whether it's bioethanol, whether it's from corn or however. So it's, to me, it's more specific, and it's difficult to give some figure which would be global. It's quite impossible, I would say.
You can, most of the time when something claims to be an average, it's because it includes all, not because it includes one. And then that's a little bit aligned with my message of templates. In a template, you don't say, okay, let's pick this electricity, but you say, let's make it versatile so that you can select the type of electricity, for example. There's a similar thing with background data. You might be modeling your case and then you need to make all those decisions, or you may already have somewhere you pick, but then you're accepting that it includes 50-50 different types of solvents, or based on their average usage. And everything like that, it makes your result a little bit less precise, but sometimes you don't know yet, so you have to pick that information. And the good thing of a critical review is that it forces you to put it in front of somebody, and that somebody might agree that that's a good average, or might say, that looks like it might be. Sometimes they say, that looks like you're shooting yourself in the foot. The emissions of that tend to be much higher than what you probably really have. And sometimes they say, you are leaving this completely out. That doesn't sound like a complete LCA.
What is the energy consumption of an older printing press, newer printing press, and
exactly
the process, whether it's this process, that process. So yeah, I see a lot of potential for making the analysis and telling the people that with this way you can really save. And to me, it's real data, and it's true. So it's not greenwashing when you go deep into that.
And one thing that is very important is to have the right data for right purposes. I was asked once that if plastic packaging is better over wood-based packaging, and like, would I know that? No, the biodiversity numbers are very different, or the CO2 numbers are very different, and then in different situations used differently. And then what needs to happen is that there needs to be a means for finding the data in that particular case, that you can, in collaboration with your customers, design the kind of mostly environmentally friendly, as environmentally friendly packaging as possible that still makes business sense. Hey, by the way, now there's a link to the Environmental Impacts Academy. Then I think we ran out of time. Again, time flies when you're with a good company. So thank you very much for your participation. The questionnaire. The world needs saving, and it will be saved with data. And one of the data is that you'll be providing and being part of the research. So please click the part that link where you can book a meeting and use half an hour. It really pays to do that. And that's also now the last one on this chat. Thank you very much for this repeating one sentence. Let's save the globe together. Have a good one. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Ciao.